wait, make a podcast.
You can listen to it whenever you want.
Whenever you want.
What do you call something like that?
What kind of device do you have?
I'd rather have someone tell them how to make a podcast than to literally watch one being made.
Learn about RSS feeds.
All right, this is real. This will be the only like element. I'm lying of bitterness that I'm going to let slip out. That panel is the same
every year,
every time,
at every convention,
right? That's happened since Apple started listing podcasts.
Yeah.
It's
how do I do it?
Exact same thing. I've done 7,000 of them. I'm sure that
apparently we should be doing one because we would have.
Give me the tweet version. Give me the 140 characters of how do I podcast.
You need to make sure that you're having a good time.
Right. Talk about something you would talk about anyway.
You got to remember.
Quality wins out.
Is important.
Right.
So, not video. Video's okay, but audio.
Here's where everybody else. This is where I get to be like the James Dean
passion.
Fonzie
You didn't say
rebel,
passion yet.
Is everybody's like, make sure that you're like editing, and I go, never edit. Just be better. Just be better at not saying ums and ahs.
They hate that.
And everyone's like, what? This is the kind of leftward thinking that I've never heard on this panel.
Whenever anybody asks me how to get into podcasting, I say, build a time machine and go back to 2006.
Yeah. Yep. And
although
I like to answer by saying.
Also, by the way, can we just open that door so they can hear a better version of that?
What you need to know is the microphone is everything. You have to have the right microphone. Before you do anything, buy the right mic.
How much did you pay for your microphone?
Hundreds.
Hundreds. Right.
Yes.
Totally.
You have to.
I'm really doing this wrong.
Got to have passion.
Yep.
I bought a Rode Podcaster for like $80.
No, you did it wrong.
Buy your passion.
Years ago.
Most expensive passion money.
You can actually buy experience with expensive microphones.
Sweet! It adds content.
It does.
No, you rub it a couple times, and old man podcast comes materializing.
Look at me, I'm old man podcast. Right when my bit was getting
good.
Awesome.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, we were doing like replacement level. We have concerns here.
You're no Carboni.
I know.
I'm no
He's here
Carboni.
somewhere.
You're no Carboni.
He might be on that panel.
Is he really?
I think he is on that panel.
Oh, that's
I'm not even joking.
hilarious.
I think Patreon reached out to him and asked him to be on that panel. So
that's hilarious.
Wait, I can't curse. Is he really here?
And he's not here?
He told me yesterday that he was coming.
Dirty SOB.
I know. I think we should just bum rush.
Are we ready to go? All right. Here
This
we go.
is mobile,
Serious
right?
style. Serious style.
Yeah, these are wireless, right? Just unplug them.
Yeah. Yeah, we should just walk over there.
This gets serious.
All right, hold on, wait. Let me get my.
I haven't been on the show in 6 months. How do you do this?
That's fine. Daily Tech News Show is powered by you. To find out more, head to dailytechnewsshow.com/support. This is the Daily Tech News for Friday, October 6th, 2017. I'm Justin Robert Young from the LA Podfest 2017 in the beautiful Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles. Joining me is an esteemed panel. First, we have Jeff Cannata from We Have Concerns. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing very, very well. Hopefully you can hear me over the crowd. It's a little crazy here at the LA Podcast Fest, but I'm really excited to be back on DTNS. Thanks, guys.
How long has it been since you've been on the show?
I don't know, but it's been a while.
I
think I haven't been on since my child was born, and he's a year. So
wow.
Yeah.
Well, it is a episode of illustrious returns. Let's get to somebody who hasn't been on in 6 months because he's been traveling the globe. It is Darren Kitchen of Hack 5.
Hey, thanks for having me. You know, last time I was on, it was slightly different, but I like what you guys have done with the whole LA thing. I don't know where Tom. I remember there was being a Tom and a Len would illustrate. But this is pretty good too.
Tom has been briefly sent to London.
You didn't send him to a farm upstate, did you?
Very upstate.
Very upstate.
Yeah. Very upstate and across the pond. And the other voice that you hear is, of course, Allison Sheridan of NosillaCast. How you doing, Allison?
I'm doing good. I'm doing fine. I get to be on a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm only here when people are sick. I don't know.
No. You are definitely on far more than these guys. But today we have all united to take over for the fact that both Tom and Sarah are not here. But we will do our best in their stead. Of course, big shout out to our producer, Roger Chang, who is also helping things out. But first, let's start with a few tech things you should know. The AOL Instant Messenger will be discontinued December 15th after 20 years of operation in a notice posted on the AIM help page, which, I mean, who is going to the AIM help page?
Searching it every day.
It stated services will end on December 15th and all data will be deleted. Users with an @aim.com email address will, however, still be able to receive email. Mr. Funk 02 was my first AIM.
Too bad you couldn't get in there a little earlier and get that first funk.
I mean, listen, there was a reason why. 02 had no other reason other than there was already a Mr. Funk.
My father is Mr. Funk.
Exactly. Any fond AIM memories?
That's my first thing I was going to say was I'm just really happy it's dying so Ray Moosehead can just go away forever and I'll never have to explain
it. Clomp off into the ether.
It's gone to the farm upstate with GeoCities. Hopefully it will live on somewhere on archive.org. Actually, hopefully not.
Oh, good question.
I actually am very excited for the idea. I think we should all just get back on AIM until it dies.
For the last few days.
Well,
Turn
just
it into a party.
Surge in popularity.
Just gigantic. Let's make AOL reconsider doing it. I would love as a nostalgia trip from now until December 15th.
That'd be amazing.
All
at
comes.
all times.
Yeah. If everybody in chat realm did this right now, you know, AIM would be like, oh my God, we've got like a 900% improvement in our uptake.
The problem
Maybe
is
we keep it around.
I don't know if I could get a hold of a 700-hour CD in order to get some time back on AOL.
I will say this. If you look at AIM and the kind of social networks that have broken out past that, if you look at how big chat is just in general, Twitter effectively being AIM away messages, but having that be the product, there is a real case to say that AIM is one of the most influential social products ever.
100%. I've seen so much snark online after this announcement came out, but you can't help but admit that AIM was
the
game
social
changer.
network.
Yeah.
In college,
Where
like,
it all
that was
started.
the thing, at least for me. You know, like that was the pre-Facebook of just like leaving. Or it wasn't. It was boom boom.
No, it was the door opening.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You just
Yeah,
leave
yeah,
the
there
messages.
you go.
Like you would walk through the halls in the dorms, and you would just hear that over and over and over.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Yeah. With the one person who never turned down their speakers, it just went from blank Sublime again to like just leave it on for the AOL Instant Messenger.
And so many good times with the cross-site scripting on that. I'm just got to say, like, there was a lot of fun that could be had, considering it was just an HTML processor. Yeah, good times hacking AIM. And I'm afraid that it's probably that the whole thing is running on a Windows NT4 server, and they're like, we just got to put this thing down.
Oh man,
there's no upgrading it. We just got to take it to the farm out back.
Are there even any clients left for this?
you asking the wrong guy.
I think both of them are upset.
Yes.
Another thing you need to know this morning is Blizzard debuted a beta version of its BattleNet program that offers offline mode and many social features, including group text and voice chat. This, to me, is Blizzard taking aim at Discord, taking aim at Steam eventually as well, with Destiny 2 coming on to the Blizzard platform on PC. I think they are making a big push to own that space.
But I just downloaded Discord today. Is it over already?
No, it's not over.
Okay.
But I will tell you that my friends and I actually prefer the Blizzard app right now. It is robust. It's easy to use.
In all 5 hours that it's been out,
No. I mean, for months we've been using it. This is just a beta with some new features, and they've had a client that's a great voice chat, and we use that to play non-Blizzard games all the time. We just turn it on in the background and use that like we would use Discord.
But this is something that Blizzard is very careful about what they come out with. That's part of their brand, is that they do add that extra kind of level of polish. Do you think that this does significant damage to Discord, which is gaming forward?
I think this is the first step of getting there, right? This is adding features that are necessary to be a contender in that space, groups, and I think making it more like an Xbox Live or a PlayStation Network, where your group exists beyond the confines of any specific game, and it exists across a whole range of games, and all of that stuff that you need to have appear offline, all those things that are just sort of basic requirements to make this everybody's day-to-day chat client when they're gaming, they're doing.
So do you think that that's where the value will be only in gaming for that though? Or is that all it's targeted towards? Because Discord is not just for gaming, right?
And they just primarily.
I think they get most of their user base from people that game, but I'm sure there are a lot of people that don't.
They just added video and voice chat today for everybody. And when we installed it, it said, hey, can we take a look at your Skype contacts? It was like, sure. And I don't know how it got them because I used a different username, but it must have gone by email and it knew all of my contacts.
Mr. Funko 2.
Yeah, I got Mr. Funko 2 was the first one.
All right, I'll tell you what. Here are some more top stories. Wait, hold on. Let's try that one more time. Well, I'll tell you what. Imagine
Want me to sing
played. After privacy scrutiny, Mattel has canceled its upcoming Aristotle Smart Home Hub aimed at children. Originally announced at CES, the device spurred a 20,000 signature petition from the Campaign for a Commercial-Free Childhood, as well as a bipartisan letter from 2 members of Congress. Aristotle was designed to be bundled Wi-Fi camera to monitor children, adjust ambient lighting and noise based on behavior, and include advanced functions like answering children's questions and teaching the alphabet.
So just in September of 2016, Mattel agreed, along with Hasbro, to stop online child tracking, and then they immediately start doing this.
Well, this isn't child tracking so much as it's
Sure,
virtual parenting, so you can not parent your child.
Well, they record all of the data.
I thought that was more of an
upload it.
indoctrination thing, which is why I heard in other news that the Borg Collective was coming out with their own home hub, smart hub, right? They've got the spokesperson, Locutus of Borg. It's all about like getting them early.
That is
Well,
important.
let me ask you this, because we have 2 parents here, and I would guess that this product would be more at Jeff's child's age.
I don't know.
Maybe my grandson is the same age.
Yeah, I was going to say
Sure.
maybe you want to keep track of your adult children, though. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they're need to
But this
keep tabs
is more to be in the child's room and for a parent to be able to keep an eye on them at all times. Where is that line for you guys in terms of I want to have all available tools to monitor my child, and this is getting a little bit too invasive and creepy, and I don't want my child around it?
I mean, I don't know. We have a camera that is a closed circuit camera that we use when my child sleeps. I think most parents do nowadays have some sort of monitoring system. The idea that it's just connected to your Wi-Fi network and maybe connected back to Mattel, I think is the one that feels weird, right?
Yeah.
To have it
with their history, especially because they've screwed this up before.
With, I mean, look what they did to Barbie.
And we'll just leave that one there.
Yeah, no, I this isn't one of those things that gives me the heebie-jeebies, but I certainly understand why it does for other people. That's not a product that I would rush out and buy, but I understand why people think that it's a bridge too far a little bit.
I think that this probably would have gone out and done well if it weren't for people who care about privacy and security coming in and saying, no. Because, I mean, how many of those webcams have sold with the hard-coded passwords in them, right?
Yeah, this already exists, and you can troll through the Shodan database right now and pull up nanny cams that are just completely exposed to the internet, which is creepy and terrifying all at the same time.
Well, I was proud of my daughter when I called her up and I said, say, you know that webcam you've got? Throw it away. And I told her why, and she said, yep, and got rid of it. But, you know, everybody doesn't know about it. Right?
The thing that's more, the other side of this that nobody's really talking about that I think is sort of the tip of the iceberg for some thing that's going to be happening over the next 5 to 10 years is it had functionality where the kid could talk to it and ask it questions. And we're going to see more and more of that as Siris and Alexas and all the things.
I mean, because that to me is where I think something like this is going to come along and not have the problems that this particular product had. And whether it be because a company will be smarter than Mattel and rolling it out and really catering to the the parents that shouldn't be worrying about it, but should instead be looking at it as like a resource. But when kids are talking to Alexa now,
Right.
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, at that point-
how is this? I mean, this is basically just a Teddy Ruxpin.
I was
Alexa
about
kind
to
of
say
thing.
exactly
Yeah.
that. Like put an Amazon Alexa in a Teddy Ruxpin, call it a day.
When they came out with the show, that one cracked me up because they said, yeah, like you can use it as a baby monitor. It had an angle tilted up, and so I pictured you'd have to put your kid in one of those nets that you keep the stuffed animals in up on the ceiling.
That's where you
Not a
keep
bad
them,
idea,
right? The
actually.
overhead bins, right? Or the seat in front of you. I can't remember.
One of those.
Yes. So get this, guys. Security researcher Will Schaefer discovered that Uber had granted undocumented app features in iOS, allowing it to access screen recording. These are undocumented entitlement features with special permissions from Apple. And according to Schaefer's library of app binaries, Uber is only the only third-party app granted screen recording entitlement. Uber acknowledged this and said that the entitlement was stated that it was used to improve the screen rendering for their Watch app.
So why
Panic! Panic! Yet another
it's an Uber story.
in the heart of the public trust by the villainous Uber.
You're not going to believe what Uber did to Barbie.
Why would they have granted that to Uber of all people?
Well, I think
Companies,
this is one of those, as Tom likes to say, FUD busting opportunities. As much as obviously the narrative, and rightfully so, is there for Uber to be playing the heel. This is a entitlement that was granted when they were building their Watch app, and as Darren very kind of eloquently put, there is a lazy but understandable reason why Apple would say this is okay.
Well, you gotta, you want to wow people with hey, we got this app that's really great and useful, but on the back end, you've got to build all the infrastructure and APIs and stuff to make those things work. And when you're really trying to just rush these things to market and be like, hey, check it out, our smartwatch has the Uber, you're like, okay, now how do we get the video from the screen to the watch most easily? Oh, just give them that API. We've already got one.
Yeah. So effectively,
That makes
if you have ever used Uber on your Apple Watch, it shows you where your car is coming from. It gives you that screen grab. That's how they got it onto your watch.
Is it real time watching it move?
I can't remember whether it was a screen grab. It shows you how long it's been since I've used the Uber Apple Watch app. But for the 5 seconds that I did, until I realized it was a lot harder than just pulling out my phone.
Right.
There was that functionality, and I think that this is something where the Uber has obviously done themselves no favors in terms of their reputation. There's a reason why their CEO is no longer their CEO, and we have a new CEO now. But this does not.
But it's funny that in this context, it's like, oh, why is Uber getting this and nobody else? And that's the conversation rather than why did Apple give it to Uber and not anyone else?
I think it's an obvious answer to both, which is Apple was making a watch and they needed apps, and Uber was one of those big high profile apps that you would want.
And we didn't know they were jerks yet.
Yeah. Well, and the selling point of the Apple Watch and smartwatches in general and apps on smartwatches are those one button apps. Right, like
integration.
I want food, hit a button. I want to ride, hit a button. And
so I can imagine the conversation within Uber and their development team was something like this with Apple, like, hey, so we're building out the Uber app. We want to be like a launch app on the new watch. Listen, we're trying to get the screen from here to there, and we're not seeing anywhere in the Watch API how to do that most effectively. So it's a good user experience. And Apple going, okay, listen, we got this internal thing. We're just going to give it to you guys.
And the time period was really compressed to get apps on the watch for launch.
But I got a question about that. If they could do that, why couldn't they use that exact API to get the interstitial screen from Wi-Fi networks onto the Apple Watch 3? So that if they can take that video at real time, send it to the watch, and then you could tap it, wouldn't that be something that would allow them to get past that problem they're having with Apple Watch 3?
That's a really, really good point.
There's a developer somewhere that's like shaking their head. I know, I already spec'd this out. They just haven't implemented it.
Right. But they didn't give themselves the internal thing that they wanted, right?
Wow.
Well, moving on, a UK financial filing shows that Alphabet's AI DeepMind subsidiary generated £40.2 million in revenue in 2016, but lost an overall a total of £123.5 million. DeepMind had to disclose earnings under UK law, as it is still registered there as a private company. Expenses were dominated by staffing and related costs of £104.7 million. DeepMind is ordinarily lumped into Alphabet's other betas in earnings reports, which lost a total of $3.77 billion in 2016.
So DeepMind is Google's neural net AI kind of play. You've read about it a lot, and we've talked about it a lot on this show.
Did we think it'd be making money by now? I wouldn't have expected
It's so
it to.
next gen technology. You know, you really got to sink a lot into the early days of these things. It's like saying like, oh, why isn't
Uber making money?
exactly right? I
So
mean,
we're in shallow mind right now.
Did you
Go
Did you hear
deeper.
what they did to Barbie though?
I think what they need to do though is like say like, okay, so we've developed it thus far. Now let's just like launch the DeepMind at the New York Stock Exchange, see if the AI can make itself some money. You know, see if it's a self-sustaining thing.
Well, I mean, I do think that this is interesting, and the reason why it's a news story is because Google hides this kind of stuff normally, as we pointed out here, that it's normally in a
It's
much
just we get
larger
to know.
file. So this is, to me, the story here is that it is not losing as much money as one might guess.
Right,
you
right.
know?
I was surprised by the generated revenue part,
Yeah, no, I mean,
not by
if
the
it's-
loss part, right?
if
Yeah,
it-
what are they getting money from?
Yeah.
What is DeepMind doing that's making money?
Well, maybe they're licensing it to
Bitcoin.
Google. No, I think that my takeaway from here was like, oh, you know what? I think that Alphabet breakout was actually a really good idea because they can take those, I don't want to say losers, but those like up and coming things that they're really going to take a long time to kind of like, you know, have that fireworks moment where it explodes.
DeepMind is something, there are a lot of players in this game right now.
Mm.
And there are some like Watson that has a more recognizable brand. They need for every time you hear DeepMind to think miracle. They want you to think, oh, it beat this Go player. Like
Right.
it did this amazing thing. It's going to compete in esports. It's look what it's doing to Barbie. There's just so much. This would be so much better if there were people to laugh at these jokes.
Telling me, man.
And that's why they got. I mean, it makes sense to hide it, right? But it is interesting to see how far along it is going, and also it's curious to see. This is what it is. Doing in the UK. And who knows where it's doing elsewhere?
Yeah. The Wall Street Journal has sources who say Russian government agents copied information from an NSA contractor's home computer in 2015 by exploiting vulnerabilities in the Kaspersky antivirus. The information pertained to the NSA's methods of network penetration and defense of its own networks. This is bad. The incident was discovered in the spring of 2016, according to the journal, and DTNS listener MB noted that Google's Travis Ormandy identified vulnerabilities in Kaspersky software in 2015. Last month, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security directed all federal agencies to stop using Kaspersky software, not immediately, but within 90 days.
Sure,
You gotta
sure.
let it takes a while to uninstall things.
Now Darren's going to have actual intelligent
But you're
context
gonna talk
for
first,
this. But I'm going to step in front of this just to bring the context of this show. This is something that we've talked quite a lot about, and specifically the idea that right now, if let's say you were in the security field in the government sphere, now would be the time when you would want to try to attack a Russian security company because of how the political climate is. We have cast a little bit of a skeptical eye towards some of the criticism towards Kaspersky, but I would think this represents something a little bit more concrete to say that, well, maybe there is a problem here. Now,
An
Darren,
example to which we could
am
point.
I off base, or is this still something that we need to look at critically?
Well, you're looking to me for some intelligent discourse, and I had literally written down in Soviet Russia, antivirus infects you. So riffing on that, I would say that no, it's...
Furthermore,
I do believe that there's a little bit of a witch... I see what you're saying as far as like witch hunt stuff.
Yes.
There's a lot of like... Everybody loves
yeah,
a good
I'm not-
whodunit.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a witch hunt because there's so much of this that is beyond what any of us can know. I'm just saying that it's a good environment for a witch hunt.
Yeah, and then the same can be
It's
said
witch hunt adjacent.
Yeah, it's just it's a witch hunting season. There's pumpkin
What are
spice
people
lattes,
talking about?
like
Yeah, I think that the same could be held true as far as like Huawei, right? Congress said the same thing about those. I think that that's actually showing like a sea change of distrust of like, not made here kind of mentality. Like,
isn't the worst thing here though that the NSA guy took his work home?
Well, okay, actually, can I tinfoil hat on that one for a moment?
Please.
Because this is like, if Russia really wanted some NSA docs from contractors, all they really needed to do was wait until next year, because those leaks from contractors are like an annual occurrence now, right?
Yeah.
So to tinfoil hat for a moment, if I were the NSA, I'd be like, ooh, opportunity for a honeypot. Let's send the contractor home with a treasure trove of misinformation, because then we can analyze how the Russian hackers break in and potentially validate whether or not the allegations of Kaspersky being compromised by the Kremlin are true.
And we clearly can't drink the poison in front of me.
I really like your optimism on that. That maybe that's what's actually going on.
Yeah, it comes back to the whole like, whether or not the NSA is actually some like crazy big brother with technology from aliens that we could never imagine, or if they're just like the DMV.
Are we disturbed at all that it took them from 2015 to 2016, some span of time there to discover this?
They move at the speed of government.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we just found out that Yahoo got hacked like 14 years ago. So,
well,
I
that the
hate
rest
to break
of the
to you,
accounts
but
were done.
AIM was really easy to hack back in the day.
no, they're gonna find out all my messages to Mr. Funk too.
O2, come on.
O2.
I think
Google Fiber announced that its upcoming launch in Louisville and San Antonio markets, it will offer package. Last year, Google announced that fiber would halt future deployment, making these two markets the last two confirmed commitments to roll out the service.
So before the show, we were chatting in the green room, and the guy behind us was actually listening to us talk about this, and he called me over and he said, I used to work Google infrastructure. And I said, oh, so why do they do something like that? Why do they stop doing something like Google Fiber? And his answer was really interesting. He said, it's been a few years since I've been there, but he said, it's the thing about them is they've got a couple of scientists that are leading the company, and if they read about something new, they're going to go do that. And Google Fiber isn't sexy, it isn't new, it isn't the thing that's 5 years out, it is the thing everybody already knows how to do, so they're bored with it and they move on. And I thought that was an interesting answer. It wasn't what I actually expected.
Well, I mean, there's also the fact that it didn't seem to be profitable. Laying fiber is very, very expensive. It involves a lot of regulation. It involves fighting very entrenched, moneyed interests. And although it was, for its time, this imaginary hero that was going to come over the hill and rescue us from
right. We would point to this and say, look, competition.
So well said.
Exactly.
That's when I thought they were doing it.
Yeah, that's their stated goal at the beginning, was like, we're not interested in making this a business. We're interested in giving people an impetus to create it for their business.
And then lo, the publicly traded company started saying, wow, wait, this isn't really a good business at all. It's like not a business, political protest, like infrastructure thing. I don't know.
Even like looking further back at infrastructure, this is actually typical of Google. If you remember the 700 megahertz spectrum auction, where they were increasing the bid, and then ultimately getting the FCC to put in place certain regulations where ultimately Verizon won, but they had to abide by certain things that Google was able to get in there by
which was good for us.
Which was good for us
consumers.
So potentially, this Google Fiber thing, maybe this was the long plan after all, was to disrupt the market in such a way that it changes some regulations in ways that we haven't just seen that was actually the plot all along.
Well, but the problem is that this kind of infrastructure deployment is so regional. Everything is city by city, and ultimately that's why it's so expensive, is that it's not like you can just win, a portion of the country, right? You can't just go like, all right, we quartered up the country, and now you get to do the Northeast, and now you get to do the Southeast or the Northwest. You have to go and deal with every city government and deal with every regulation and figure out exactly how that's going to go.
My buddy just got AT&T fiber installed here in Los Angeles, and I'm insanely jealous because he has gigabit Ethernet. And I looked, and I am also a resident of Los Angeles, but not close enough to get. It doesn't work at my house.
Would he have gotten AT&T gigabit fiber had Had Google
done
not
this?
started with the whole, you know,
I don't
gigabit
believe
fiber
so.
thing.
I think you're right. I think it's to their credit that this exists at all. Yeah.
Oh, if you look at specifically the cities where Google did roll out fiber, it was almost
Oh, it was
immediate.
overnight. Yeah.
All of a sudden, everybody.
We could never roll out gigabit fiber. It would be impossible. What they're doing? What now?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, actually, we've got
Well, I
a
think
plan for you.
I think
Oh
that
my
dark
God.
fiber they turned on. They already had it there. And
So
hadn't gotten around to
crazy
it.
that you were doing that because
Hey,
we
Bob.
were like literally.
The guys are in the
Just
truck right now.
this is funny story.
Your
You guys are-
pizza's already on the way. I remember hearing.
Hey guys, if you want to get all the tech headlines each day in about 5 minutes, go ahead and subscribe to the dailytechheadlines.com. We can get into our discussion here since we are at the LA Podcast Festival and we have all been doing podcasts up here on this dais for a pretty long time.
It feels like that up here on that dais.
Make sure you leave time for questions from the audience, though.
Is starting a podcast now, do you think like harder or easier than it was 10 years ago? Start with you, Allison.
Well, I started mine 12 years ago, and I sat down and read someone else's XML to try to figure out how do I type in the RSS,
Sure.
create the RSS feed by hand. So that's a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I look back and I see what other people are doing. I go, man, I'm still doing a lot of this the hard way, but I know this makes the show come out every single week. The tools are the big thing, but as we were joking around beforehand, I'm pretty sure it's not the tools that are actually the hard part of doing a podcast, right? I mean, it's the commitment, it's the time, it's the passion, it's getting guests to show up. All those are really the harder parts. And in those ways, I don't think that's probably ever going to change.
I would agree that the landscape has completely changed, but some of the core things stay the same. Obviously, the technology has changed because when we started, 10 years ago or more, it was all about BitTorrent and RSS. And yes, the landscape has changed, but you're right about the commitment. That hasn't changed. The amount of passion and time that you have to put into something stays consistent. The things that are different and other than the technology is the ways that you build audience and you grow audience and you interact with audience. And those present some unique challenges, and we'll talk about those as far as like how that has changed.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I was gonna say that is the single biggest thing that changed for me. It didn't make it harder, it made it easier. Is in 2005, I was sitting alone in a room with a microphone. Now I'm still sitting alone in a room with a microphone, but I don't feel alone because I've got a live chat room while I'm doing the recording. And it's real stupid. I mean, they talk about the dumbest things, but
wait, people talk about dumb things on IRC?
I know they talk about Barbie a lot. I'm not sure what happened, but something happened. But that to me made the job easier and so much more fun because the community,
Right.
the community stuff is crazy fun now.
Well, it's interesting because it's almost two different questions, right? Is it easier to start a podcast? Yeah, it's so much easier because there's so many tools, as you guys have outlined. But what the real question is, what do you want out of the podcast, right?
Yeah.
Are you trying to make a living? Are you trying to make money? Are you trying to have a big audience? What is it that you're looking for by starting your podcast? And I think all of us can agree that it's very easy now to get a podcast, put it out there, and have someone listen to it. That is much more simple than it has ever been.
Because
Well,
there
let me-
are audience members.
Let me actually just spin off of something that you said. Is it easier now than it was when you started to make a living doing a podcast, or harder?
Well, when I started, there were like, a dozen people making a living doing a podcast. So it
What year did you get in?
2005.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So, or 2006, I guess, technically. But there are more people doing it, but there's also a much bigger fragmentation. It's a bigger pie, but it's also smaller slices of that pie. So I think there's probably more ways, more places that are willing to give money and more.
Things like Patreon existing.
Patreon is a huge
Right,
thing.
right.
That, my God, if that had existed 10 years ago, my life would be completely different.
We'd be worth thousands.
Yeah. But also there are networks of people whose whole job is to find ads for podcasts. All those things, that infrastructure didn't exist back then, but also it's a much more crowded place. So rising above just the ambient noise.
That's the story.
It's true though.
Yes, but it's always been true,
Of
right?
all entertainment.
I mean, I know.
Right.
No, well, podcasting specifically. I
Right.
remember
Because we can say like, oh, well, we got in like right place, right time, 2005. The same people can say like, oh man, I'm really glad I got in 2010 before it blew up. Oh man, I'm so glad I got in 2014.
Beginning of podcast.
That's true. Mark Maron's like, I'm the first podcaster.
Exactly.
I was doing it for 5 years, bro.
Yeah, I know. No, I remember when Kevin Smith launched his podcast. I'm like, shame he got in after the boom. You know, like,
New guy.
I think he could have done well if it weren't for the fact that everybody already has listened to all the podcasts they'll ever listen to.
You make a great point, and that is, I think that the horizon is even larger. There is a huge untapped audience of people that will enjoy long form content like this that's deep and engaging and interesting and mostly ad free. All of that stuff I think is right for a much larger audience. But I also think with that potential, I think it marginalizes amateur voices more. I think that what you see in the top 200 podcasts now, for the most part, are famous people that are already famous from another medium. Right.
Well, yeah. Even Leo has always been answering that question. How do you get a successful podcast? He says, well, first have a syndicated television show for 5 years, and then
it's true.
Yes, and then you have these slipstreams like talking about murder, right?
And show up out of nowhere. Right?
Then all of a sudden you can have literally no experience and have zero profile.
Are you talking about like you talking about an NPR show? Is that what you're
saying? No, I'm talking about one of the headliners here at this show, My Favorite Murder, which was a somebody who was a writer for like Mr. Show, but by and large didn't have much of a profile. But
if it hadn't been for the NPR podcast about murder, I'm not sure that would have been a hot. Well, murder always sells.
But I mean, like, listen, the Discovery ID channel exists, and all these true crime things. True crime is something that's kind of come and gone from popular culture. I guess absolutely, it will always give you an advantage to have, specifically in where we are now in culture, as the monoculture has completely shattered. So anything that everybody or a larger group of people can touch back on and say, oh, I remember him. He's this guy. Now he does this. Like, he's the Fear Factor guy. Now he talks about doing DMT and interviewing UFC athletes, right? That will always give you a leg up, right? But there is still, I think, a solid amount of podcasting that is what was kind of the initial promise. That start a show, build an audience, and hey kid, we'll make you famous, and you too can read ads for Nature Box.
As far as like, exactly. As far as how the industry has changed and like new podcasts coming to garner huge audiences. One of the ones that I think about more recently is Hello Internet, which comes out of CPG Grey, who made a name as a YouTuber. And then out of that, sort of like also making podcasts. And the YouTube thing is like that short form, 4 or 5 minute catchy thing. And then it's like, oh, well, you might as well, you've got a ravenous audience that's looking for those things that take forever to produce.
So Darren, what you're saying is how to get into podcasting. See also my panel on how to get into YouTubing.
Well, actually, no, but to that effect, I will say that when people ask what I do and I try to say I'm a podcaster and they give you this weird blank look and I'm just like, I'm a YouTuber, and they're like, "Oh, you're a YouTuber."
I don't do any of that stuff, man. I don't even try.
Wait, what do you do? What do you say?
I say I host stuff. I talk about tech. I talk about entertainment.
I say internet radio show.
Oh, that's good.
And they seem to understand that, but I'm noticing people don't do that cock of the head anymore, and it was ever since what was it called? Disclosed. And what was the original one? Serial. Serial was the first one. Since then, people seem to know what a podcast is.
I find that the second I use that word podcast, it's the conversation is completely.
In fact, I remember it was actually just recently cleaning up hack5.org, which is like a WordPress install from 2005 that I can't believe is still going. But I found ye old blog roll, and in it was a list of all of the places that we sent people to back in 2005. And it was like techtainment.net and vidcast.org. And both of those are great examples of, they were literally a blog that would list the new video that just hit the internet.
Oh man.
Every time there was a new video on the internet.
Oh, wow.
We put awesome. I had a comedy group that put our sketches on Atom Films because there was no YouTube.
Right.
Yeah.
We put out stuff on, just aggregators. That was all it was.
And at the time, there was this big debate, like, oh, well, what is this video that's a podcast? Is it? And then people were calling them vidcasts and IPTV and
IPTV.
and yet now, like, it's really
Hashtag
just easier to
vlog.
say I make videos on the internet.
Hashtag old enough to remember. All right, well, here.
I have a question for you guys. Can I?
Sure.
I mean, it's wild, kind of crazy.
Yeah.
It's not on the agenda.
Go nuts.
You okay?
Go.
So have you found that once you started doing podcasting, you sort of I lost the word, proliferated into other podcasts, creating more of your own? They seem to spawn each other. Are you guys having that
I think
problem?
that's a question for Justin.
I mean, I don't have a problem. You have a problem. No, I mean, I think part of the making a living in podcasting thing is, making a lot of them, and also just figuring out, just scratching that lotto ticket and seeing whether or not your guess on what the audience wants, the way that you're building your show, the people that that are on the show with you, how the audience is responding, how long it is, whether or not all your guesses on that are right, and they're never right. So then you got to change it a little bit, right? And then you see whether or not that's good and that's right. And then if it isn't, then you got to shut it down. And sometimes that's a longer process, and you wind up doing a lot of them, or they're of a certain level of success, and it just makes sense to keep doing it. But I would not be able to make a living if I didn't do this 7,000 podcasts that I do every week.
I tell my wife a lot of little things add up to one reasonable thing.
Yep.
And that's how I make a living.
But yeah, no, I think that there is, once you figure it out, and also part of it's like, why we build this television station if we're not going to do, a bunch of television shows, right? Like when you have the equipment and you have the know-how, I think absolutely there is a drive to just keep going and making more.
So I don't do it for a living, but I do it. I just can't stop doing it. My shows get too big, and then I break them off into more shows.
Mhm.
So I'm afraid that 10 years from now I'm going to have 20 shows, but because they just keep spawning.
You're going to be like
they show up by
the
themselves.
crazy podcast lady.
Yeah, with like podcasts all over the
my
house.
shows.
Yeah.
I know I left it. They could sometimes my shows crawl under the furniture.
All right, Allison, let me ask you this, and we'll go down the road here. What's the biggest change you've noticed from when you started, and what is the biggest change you see happening going forward?
Ooh, the second part will be hard because I'm really bad at forecasting anything into the future. The biggest change for me was definitely the community stuff. Mm-hmm. Steve and I have become friends with people all over the world. We've traveled to Europe to meet people, to New Zealand, and met people because of the podcast. So I talk a lot to my human real life friends. They say, oh, well, the internet, those aren't real friends. I said, well, no, I've gone to Ireland to meet them. I've gone I've gone all these places. And even the people I've never met in real life, we're really good friends with this guy, Kevin. He lives in Virginia. We know his children. We know what they like, what they do. We know his wife. We know where he lives. Stalking him practically, but it is a real friendship. And that's something I just absolutely didn't see happening in that. As far as going forward, I am literally the worst predictor of the future in technology of all times. I actually said that you'd never need anything bigger than the screen on a 512K Mac. Okay, I said
Right.
that, and
Jury's still out. Jury's still out.
I also said you'd never need color. There's no reason for color, so I'm not going to take that second question.
Okay, good punt, Darren.
I would say that when we very first got into this, it really felt like a sea change of like the origins, the passion of the internet was coming out in ways that we call it all love. The open web, using content distribution with BitTorrent and other open source technology, and using RSS feeds and things that really democratized the media. In fact, that was actually the big word back then, was the democratization of media. And we look at where it is now, and I see like it's very difficult to try to it was hard back then to explain to people. And I feel like there was an uptake in like RSS and such. And then there was like that drop off again, where now it's like, oh wait, that isn't an app. And the app has become like the YouTube Reds of the world, or the Facebook walled gardens of the world, where it's like, okay, well, I'm going to go take a flight. Let me download some stuff on YouTube Red rather than download it on an RSS feed with a podcatcher. It feels like there's much more walled gardens and less of the open web that started this.
And do you think that gets more or less over the next 5 years?
I think it gets more, but I think as unfortunate as it is, it actually garners a larger audience. Just that ease of use factor.
Yeah.
So I think there's still opportunities for a open web experience to harness that same magic that the Facebooks and YouTubes of the world have done. I just haven't seen it yet.
Jeff?
I think for me, the biggest difference, and we kind of talked about this a little bit already, is Patreon, quite frankly. Because
seconded, by the way.
Yeah, when you podcasting started and it was like, oh my gosh, anybody can do this, but there's really no way to make money unless you link together and figure out a way to sell ads and there was still an intermediation that happened, a walled garden, a gated thing that, gatekeepers, right? That said you can't do this unless you can sell nature boxes, for example.
Exactly, and that specific problem, I think, really only got worse because once podcasting was new, you had a lot of, just like feelers of companies that were like, let's spend a little money on this. Let's try to toss a little cash in there. And then it didn't quite pan out and it didn't quite grow fast enough. And then that sort of came back. And all of a sudden, this is what I like to call, for anybody who's listened to a lot of podcasts, the Netflix and Audible era.
We sold Netflix like heck on TRS, man.
Exactly. And the reason why was because there weren't a lot of Ford, Microsoft, paper towel, kind of stuff that wanted to do, big companies that wanted to go do it. So the companies that were willing were either right in the demo. Right. You are cutting edge. You are spending money on stuff. You have disposable income.
And you're on the internet.
And we are maybe going to pay you a little bit, but we're really going to try and sell you on the future of this, which is you get a cut whenever anyone signs up.
Right.
And that was low risk advertising that could be blanketed all over a ton of podcasts. And now you've seen a little bit, as the pie has gotten bigger, you've seen a little bit more of at least new companies come in.
I really thought it was going to go to somebody figuring out micropayments. That's what I thought was going to happen. So again, I'm wrong. But I thought somebody would come up with this way that we would all just get a piece of it with micropayments with ads.
Different colored ones.
I guess. I don't know.
All
Black
right.
and white only.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'm glad that we've charted the complete history and total future of podcasting. Asimov would be proud, foundation style. We've totally nailed it. Let's go ahead and thank our amazing panel. Allison, Sheridan, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you?
Thanks for letting me be on the show here. Podfeet.com is the best place to find me. I'm Podfeet everywhere.
Darren Kitchen, where, now that you're back to traipsing around the globe, where can people find you?
Hack5.org, as always. That's HAK, the number 5. And we've got a big event coming up on the 20th of October in San Francisco. So if you're interested in any of that Hack 5 gear, check it out. You'll find details on our social media.
Event? What's the event?
It's the Hack 5 Gear event.
The gear event? What are you guys announcing? Break some news.
The Packet Squirrel. It's nuts.
Stop it.
I like it already.
Jeff just lit up like a Christmas tree after hearing that pun.
I need one.
Jeff, where can we find more of you?
You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Jeff Cannata, which is spelled with 2 N's and 1 T. I do a lot of shows. The one I'll just mention right now is a comedy science show that you might like. It's only 20 minutes. It's called We Have Concerns. You can find it at wehaveconcerns.com.
Hilarious show.
Very good. And of course, you can find me at Justin R. Young on Twitter. I do too many podcasts. That's really my problem. I want to thank everybody for coming out and producing this show here at the LA Podcast Festival. And a thank you to the LA Podcast Festival itself for hosting us. A reminder that our email address is feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. That is, you can also find us at Novel Geek Radio and DiamondClub.tv. Our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. Tom is back on Monday, but he'll be broadcasting from Old Blighty with Sarah Lane joining him online. Till next time, this is DTNS. Woo!
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Boom.
That was fun.
Thank you, LA.
Thank you,
Woo!
Steve.
No autographs.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
I had fun.
Thank you for letting me use that.
Sure, yeah.